blessings, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Peace and blessings once again. This is the Essene Community Church of Christ. My name is Archbishop Shamar.
And I'm Bishop Michaela.
And we be bringing forth today's lesson/report. Today is the Sabbath, all right, similitude of 1,000-year rest that our Lord and Savior, Yeshua Christ, who the world calls Jesus Christ, will be bringing to us. First and foremost, all praises be unto the Most High Almighty, Yeshua Christ, our Lord and Savior, who the world calls Jesus Christ. All right, the I am that I am in the Old Testament. All right, the I am, Ahaya in Hebrew. Our Lord and Savior, the fullness of the Godhead. All praises be unto him who is the image of God. This is the consuming fire, the image of God versus the image that provokes. The glorification of the Son. We are at part 6. All right, once again, this is a lengthy lesson because upon coming into this lesson, we see that the whole Bible, the whole story is wrapped around the image of God. From the falling of Satan, not wanting to acknowledge the image of God that was made, all right, to the image of God lying, all right, which Christ is the image of God, and the Son listens to the Father, and Adam did not listen to the Father, therefore he fell, all right. Then we went on to the murder of the image of God done through Cain, all right. The idol worship of the image of God brought on by Satan. The fallen angels, the mixing of the blood, destroying the image of God, all right. The erecting of life-size statues big size as the giants start to happen. Flood coming, all right. Coming down to Nebuchadnezzar, coming down to, Nimrod, all right. The Tower, Babel, and then we zone in on down to Israel and what happened with Israel. And Israel, all right, the king, Saul, not listening, supposed to kill all the Amalekites, loses his reign. David, man after the Most High's heart, sins, but not committing image of God sins, which is a difference. Why the Most High didn't punish him. Solomon comes into play, dealing with the women. Most High winks at that. Now, under the woman, he sacrifices to the image that provokes. Problem with that. All right. Israel split. Enemies coming up against Israel. All right. Solomon sins and things. All right. The temples he erected, the knowledge that he brought up under that sin. All right. Jeroboam, all of that coming in. All right. His servant coming in rule now. The sins of him seeping in to Israel. The constant kings reigning and committing the image of God's sins. And then kings reigning up to try to cleanse the area before the Most High's wrath comes. All right. We see the 10 tribes taken off into places in Iran. All right. People in Iran brought to Samaria. All right. Judah escaping that. All right. By the righteous king rising up. All right. And cleaning and cleansing all the sins and things that Jezebel, all right, them was doing. And then Israel fall into sin right after them going into Babylon, them getting taken down. And this is where we're at. All right, they got taken down. They're all in Babylon. We went into Nebuchadnezzar, the image that was brought up. We went into Meshach, Abednego. Meshach, Shadrach, Abednego. All right. We seen Hosea. We ended it off with the Most High telling Hosea to marry himself an adulterous wife. And this is a similitude for what Israel was doing, and to keep with her, tell her to follow the law and do all of that. All right. And the prophets always had to foreshadow the things for Israel in the physical. So therefore, he caused Hosea to get himself an adulterous wife and to make her his wife and to be with her, so that Israel could see this is what you're doing. All right. Where he says, thou shalt abide with me for many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot. Thou shalt not be for another man. So I'll be for thee. And he's basically saying this because you're going to tell this girl this, or you think she's going to be able to do this. Whatever he's going to be dealing with, which the scripture is not going into. This is what's happening with Israel. This is why he's telling him to do that, because he knows this is what's going to come of it. It's not going to be a beautiful relationship. He's telling him that because do that, Israel's going to see all the stuff that's happening. He's going to have a whole heartache now. All right, and that's basically where we're at. All right, so Nebuchadnezzar takes down Israel. He's going to pass, and we're going to see King Cyrus. We're going to start at King Cyrus. Before we start, we're going to go to Isaiah 53 and 1.
It's the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 53, verse 1. Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed?
All right, so who is going to believe the report? So we always go to this because Isaiah had to go to this even in his time. Who's going to believe the report? Because how the Most High operates, he operates in secrecy. He doesn't come and put his arm around the individual, say, I'm endorsing this individual, this is who I'm with. He reveals himself in such secrecy through knowledge and information. He sends this individual out with the word to declare, thus saith the Most High, as he sent the word of the Lord onto this chosen vessel to reveal what he said unto him. And he sent out to declare to the people. All right, the Most High always had the people use their ears, their hearts, and their mind, because people could make all type of excuse, but they can seek knowledge. People have the ability to understand. They understand what they want to understand. All right. They say they don't understand the Bible, but they'll end up in a new country talking to a doctor that has a different language and getting whatever surgery that they need to get off of research. All right, so people could find whatever they want. All right, men go out, they find all the illegal things that they want and how to do it and everything that regular people can't do. All right, people make excuses. All right, the Father knows people can comprehend if they really want to. This is why he's sending the word out, why you have to comprehend, why you have to listen, because you have the ability to comprehend if you try with all your heart, all your soul, all your might, like the prayer says. All right. So with that being said, all right, we're going to go through the scriptures, sure that they're interpreted, translated, taught correctly. Once again, we're at the consuming fire, the image of God versus the image of that provokes, the glorification of the Son. We are at part 6. We are in the time of King Cyrus. All right. Babylon took us down. Israel was already taken by Assyria, the 10 tribes. All right. And we're going to go and see what's going on now. That's right, Daniel 14 and 1.
It's the book of the prophet Daniel, chapter 14, verse 1. And King Astyages was gathered to his fathers, and Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom. And Daniel conversed with the king, and was honored above all his friends. Now the Babylons had an idol called Bel, and there went upon him every day 12 great measures of fine flour, and 40 sheep, and 6 vessels of wine. And the king worshipped it, and went daily to adore it. But Daniel worshipped his own God. And the king said unto him, Why dost thou not worship thou, Slakia? Why dost not thou worship Bel?
All right. So here we are. We're just at Meshach, Shadrach, Abednego. They had their time with Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar's gone. We're at the time of Cyrus. We have Daniel here, the prophet. All right. He's now dealing with King Cyrus of Persia. All right. And King Cyrus and the Babylonians have an idol and its name is Bel. All right, and they're getting fine flour, 40 sheep, 6 vessels of wine. This is what this thing is eating per day, and it doesn't eat. Right? But this is what they're giving to it. All right, the king's worshiping it daily, adoring it. Daniel is dealing with his own God once again. So we're here seeing the emphasis of the image of God versus the image that provokes it coming into contact now. All right, continue for us.
Verse 5. Who answered and said, because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God, who hath created the heaven and the earth, and hath sovereignty over all flesh. Then said the king unto him, thinkest thou not that Bel is a living God? Seest thou not how much he eateth and drinketh every day? Then Daniel smiled and said, O king, be not deceived, for this is but clay within and brass without, and did never eat or drink anything.
All right. So here we have, and Daniel is letting them know that, hey, he deals with the God that created heaven and earth. He deals with the God that has sovereignty over all. See, he mentioned that sovereignty. So even in that time, you have to understand, we have to go into the mind of Daniel. He understands, when he's saying this word, he understands what's around this word. All right. He's like, understand that my God has full sovereignty over all things. Your gods are subservient to him. All right, which is saying his God has all sovereignty over all flesh. He's the one that rules over each flesh. All right, and the king is asking him, you think that Bel is not a living God? We have to go into these people's mind frame. So the people at this time, all right, without the light of Christ, without knowing God, because once again, without the sun, there's no light. So this is how it's easy for you to understand how people understood things. They understood things, but they understood it in a dark way. Because if there's no sun, there's no light. So if there's no Christ and information of Christ, there's no fullness of light. All right? You're not enlightened. And this is an example of how they're not enlightened. All right? This is still going on in places in India where they're dealing with a whole bunch of idols, believing in these idols, believing what's being said. All right? So he really think the idol is living. He really think the idol is eating. All right? And Daniel is smiling, knowing, hey, I'm dealing with the real God. He's not dumb like this, all right? He's enlightened, all right? And he's letting them know there's just clay. This thing doesn't eat nor drink. But this is the mindset of heathen and people when they're not introduced into Christ. And if people are not dealing with idols, guess what? Whether you know it or not, whether people like it or not, they're living Christian mindsets. You've been Christianized to why you don't believe in an idol. Because if you're going to go into your culture where you come from, they believe in the idol. Okay? Why don't you? Because you got enlightened, all right? You might not believe in him, but you believe in the system and believe in the knowledge. All right? But you don't want to praise the God. You're denying the power thereof. All right? So let's go to Daniel 14 and 7.
It's the book of the prophet Daniel, chapter 14, verse 7. Then Daniel smiled and said, O king, be not deceived, for this is but clay within and brass without, and did never eat or drink anything. So the king was wroth, and called for his priests, and said unto them, If ye tell me not who this is that devoured these expenses, ye shall die.
All right, so he's letting them know. All right, he's calling for his priests in this. He's like, you're not telling me who's devouring these things that I'm putting out every day, all day. You're telling me all the stuff I'm putting out, he ain't been eating. All right, continue. Verse 9.
Verse 9. But if ye can certify me that Bel devoureth them, then Daniel shall die, for he hath spoken blasphemy against Bel. And Daniel said unto the king, Let it be according to thy word.
All right, so here we have the showdown, the image of God versus the image that provokes. If it doesn't eat, Daniel doesn't die. If it eats, Daniel dies. If it doesn't eat, the priests die. This is the showdown, okay? Which God is real, which God is not. This is happening in the old covenant. This is why it's hard when we're reading this. You're like, because the world is different now. It's been enlightened through Christ. The nations have been enlightened through Christ. This is why it's hard to imagine, they're doing this. Just go look in the old world and you'll be able to see how people really operate and think like this. All right, could be hard for people, especially on the Western side, to think like this, unless you're going into Wicca and all these different stuffs. All right, but continue.
Verse 10. Now the priests of Bel were 70, beside their wives and children. And the king went with Daniel into the temple of Bel. So Bel's priest said, Lo, we go out. But thou, O king, set on the meat, and make ready the wine, and shut the door fast, and seal it with thine own signet. And tomorrow, when thou comest in, if thou findest not that hath eaten up all, we will suffer death, or else Daniel, that speaketh falsely against us. And they little regarded it, for under the table they had made a privy entrance, whereby they entered in continually, and consumed those things. So when they were gone forth, the king set meats before Bel. Now Daniel had commanded his servants to bring ashes, and those they strewed throughout all the temple in the presence of the king alone. And they went they out, and shut the door, and sealed it with the king's signet, and so departed. Now in the night came the priests with their wives and children, as they were wont to do, and did eat and drink up all. In the morning betime the king arose, and Daniel with him. And the king said, Daniel, are the seals whole? And he said, Yea, O king, they be whole. And as soon as he had opened the door, the king looked upon the table, and cried with a loud voice, Great art thou, O Bel, and with thee is no deceit at all.
All right, so here we're seeing that the people, all right, that under the table they have a privy entrance, all right, whereby they enter in continually to consume the things. So people worship these things, and they knew that their leader, once again, when your leader is blind, you take advantage of your leader. So they're taking advantage of their leader, all right, because they know he's blind and they can do certain things without him knowing, all right. And this was one of the things he's thinking he's dealing with his gods, but the people out of their greed. So when you're greed and you have all of that, you have the ability to do what you want, like I'm explaining. All right, they have the ability to fool the king and make a privy entrance around the table and all of that stuff. All right, and he's now believing that Bel is a real living god because the food is consumed and the seals around the doors, all of that's not broken. All right, continue for us.
Verse 19. Then laughed Daniel, and held the king that he should not go in, and said, Behold now the pavement, and mark well whose footsteps are these. And the king said, I see the footsteps of men, women, and children. And then the king was angry, and took the priests with their wives and children, who showed him the privy doors, where they came in, and consumed such things as were upon the table. Therefore the king slew them, and delivered Bel into Daniel's power, who destroyed him and his temple.
All right, so Daniel laughing, exposing them, showing him what's going on, showing him the footprints of the children, the women, all of that. The king now slews them. He gives Bel into the power of Daniel, who destroys Bel and the temple of Bel. All right. Image that provokes, destroy. All right. Continue for us.
Verse 23. And in that same place there was a great dragon, which they of Babylon worship. And the king said unto Daniel, Wilt thou also say that this is of brass? Lo, he liveth, he eateth and drinketh. Thou canst not say that he is no living God. Therefore worship him. Then said Daniel unto the king, I will worship the Lord my God, for he is the living God. But give me leave, O king, and I shall slay this dragon without sword or staff. The king said, I give thee leave. Then Daniel took pitch, and fat, and hair, and did seethe them together, and made lumps thereof. This he put in the dragon's mouth, and so the dragon burst in asunder. And Daniel said, Lo, these are the gods ye worship.
All right, so look at him. All right, after he deals with Bel and that, there's now a great dragon that they're dealing in Babylon. And he's like, don't tell me you're going to tell me this is just a brass tooth. This is not a real God. You know, worship this one. He's like, I'm going to deal with the Most High, my God, the living God. All right. He's like, give me this dragon. Put this dragon in my hand too, I'll show you. He gives it to him, once again, destroys him. And he's showing the king, he's taking him out of the mindset that they're in, all right, without knowledge. Because once again, when mankind fell, they fell from fullness of light. Adam was naming everything. He had knowledge. He was able to name things that he didn't even know, all right? Man fell from that. And if they're not linked in with the Most High, then their knowledge is lacking. And this is where we see they're lacking. And with this comes lacking in what we call, as well as sanitary lacking. So they're not cleanliness, all right? So the way they operate is not clean. The things that they do is not clean. Just go take a look. In this video, we're going to put images of the old world and how they operate and how the place is not clean. And if you're dealing with this, then you don't really care. Your God's not telling you about cleaning. There's one God that cares about that. That's the Most High God. All right? The other ones just care about your worship and all what you're doing. All right, so we're going to continue. We're going to continue to verse 28. Daniel 14 and 28.
Book of the prophet Daniel, chapter 14, verse 28.
We're at page 49.
Book of the prophet Daniel, chapter 14, verse 28. When they of Babylon heard that, they took great indignation and conspired against the king, saying, the king is become a Jew, and he had destroyed Bel. He had slain the dragon and put the priest to death. So they came to the king and said, deliver us Daniel, or else we will destroy thee and thine house. Now when the king saw that they pressed him sore, being constrained, he delivered Daniel unto them, who cast him into the lion's den, where he was 6 days. And in the den there were 7 lions, and they had given him every day 2 carcasses, and 2 sheep, which then were not given to them, to the intent they might devour Daniel.
All right. So Daniel destroys the 2 idols. All right. The images that provoke. All right. Praises the living God. The people are seeing this. All right. And they're now calling the king a Jew. He's like, yo, you turn to a Jew. You're killing the idols. He's a Jew. All right. If you're not a Jew, give us Daniel. All right. And the king now doesn't want the people to revolt. Gives up Daniel. Daniel's now gone into the lion's den. This is how he ends up here. All right. He now ends up in the lion's den. And the lion, they eat and they feed a whole bunch of stuff, and they're not giving it to him. And now they're doing this so that the lion will eat up Daniel. All right. This is how we get to Daniel and the lion's den. Let's go now. So we're at Daniel 14:33.
It's the book of the prophet Daniel, chapter 14, verse 33. Now there was in Jewry a prophet called Habakkuk, who had made pottage and had broken bread in a bowl, and was going into the field for to bring it to the reapers. But the angel of the Lord said unto Habakkuk, go, carry the dinner that thou hast into Babylon unto Daniel, who is in the lion's den. And Habakkuk said, Lord, I never saw Babylon, neither do I know where the den is. Then the angel of the Lord took him by the crown, and bare him by the hair of his head, and through the vehemency of his spirit set him in Babylon over the den. And Habakkuk cried, saying, O Daniel, Daniel, take the dinner which God had sent thee. And Daniel said, Thou hast remembered me, O God, neither hast thou forsaken them that seek thee and love thee.
All right, so here Habakkuk now makes his entrance. All right, and Habakkuk is here as a prophet, and he's there sent to Daniel to give Daniel help and food. All right, and he's given it to him, and he's now grateful that the Most High has remembered him, hasn't forsaken him. All right, continue for us.
Verse 39. So Daniel arose and did eat, and the angel of the Lord set Habakkuk in his own place again immediately. Upon the 7th day the king went to bewail Daniel. And when he came to the den, he looked in, and behold, Daniel was sitting. Then cried the king with a loud voice, saying, Great art, Lord God of Daniel, and there is none other beside thee. And he drew him out, and cast those that were the cause of his destruction into the den, and they were devoured in a moment before his face.
All right. So the angel of the Lord brings Habakkuk into there. He feeds Daniel. Daniel's happy. The king comes back, sees Daniel sitting, sees that he's not been eaten by the lions. He understands that Daniel's God is the real God. So once again, what we've been seeing is that the nations really just didn't know that they're dealing with fake gods. All right. And once they do, they're going to praise the real God. All right. We had that example. It's the Sumerians and the people from Iran came into Samaria, and the people from Samaria, the tribes, went to the other place. The people didn't know the laws. They didn't know what they're doing. Mosai sent lions, things in there to devour them. They realize they're not keeping the law. They want a priest to teach them the law. They're going to go and they're going to keep the law. Now we have a Samaritan Bible, all of this stuff. They're at least trying to do it in the best that they can. All right. Israel knows this and is not trying. All right. And we see here the king, they're dealing with this, but he really doesn't know he's dealing with a false idol. All right. The Most High blessed Israel with coming to him and revealing himself unto them and letting them know that he is the God of the whole universe, heaven and earth. All right. And now King Cyrus, he's realized that this is the real and true God. All right. And even going into this, because we're going to now see King Cyrus, the same King Cyrus responsible for rebuilding the temple and making us come back from this captivity. All right. And even looking at the historians, because the Bible is so broken up and they don't have the Apocrypha and all of that, a lot of people is wondering why King Cyrus did this, and that the Most High must have talked to him one day and did this. This is the story of why King Cyrus did this. He realized who the real God is, and now that he realized who the real God is, we're going to see what it is he's going to do in the earth now. So we're at Ezra 1:1.
It's the book of the prophet Ezra, chapter 1, verse 1. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of King Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven had given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he had charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? His God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord God of Israel. He is the God which is in Jerusalem.
All right. So King Cyrus now is making a proclamation throughout. Now that he's been revealed who the real God is, he understands where all his power came from and everything. He's now going to be devoted to the Most High. So we're going to start to see a trend of this. All right. That when the nations know that they're dealing with the true God, they're going to relieve Israel. All right. So he's relieving Israel. He's saying they're dealing with the true God. He's the true God. Yo, I'm going to build the true God a temple. All right. Because he's been given to fake gods the whole time. He's going to give to a real God now that's been revealed to him. All right. And he's going to build God a house. All right. In Israel, which is in Jerusalem. All right. For the Lord God of Israel. Because he is the true living God. All right, continue for us.
Verse 4. And whosoever remaineth in any place where he sojourneth, let the men of his place help him with silver and with gold, and with goods, and with beasts, beside the freewill offering for the house of God that is in Jerusalem. Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, with all them whose spirit God had raised, to go up to build the house of the Lord, which is in Jerusalem.
All right. So he commands all the people to go back up to the house, build the house of the Lord. Now we have the tribes that was caught now, and they were all in captivity because of what happened with King Cyrus and Daniel, all of that. Now this is the proclamation that they can now return. Temple now could start to be rebuilt again. All right. So we've seen it was closed down. All Israel was taken. This is how it came back up again. All right. With King Cyrus being revealed, the true God, and him now wanting to do something for the real God, he releases the people. He restores the temple, or makes a proclamation now to start the rebuild of the temple. So it's not rebuilt right automatically. Some things do happen. Rebuild stops for some time, and then it gets. We're gonna get into all of that. All right. So we're going to go now to who is Antiochus Epiphanes.
Antiochus Epiphanes IV, Greek, meaning God manifest, also called Antiochus Epimanes, born 215 before Christian era, died 164 in Iran. Seleucid king of the Hellenistic Syrian kingdom who reigned from 175 to 164 BCE. As a ruler, he was best known for his encouragement of Greek culture and institutions. His attempts to suppress Judaism brought on the wars of the Maccabees.
All right. So he comes on about 215 years before Christ comes on the scene and the Christian era starts. All right. Once again, that BCE is before Christian era. All right. I seen somebody, a pagan person in the weekend, they tried to ignore that C and they put 500 and something BE. And I was trying to figure out what did they try to put B? Why did they put BE there and cancel out the C? It was actually, chocolate wise. I'm like, they didn't want to acknowledge the Christian part. But I'm like, I want before era. It didn't make sense how you would have that. Like, but he put something BE because he didn't want to acknowledge the C part of it. All right, but you have to acknowledge the C part of it. All right, so the thing before happened about between 514 536 BCE. All right, so we're about like almost 300 years after that. All right, a whole lot of things is going on. We're at the time now of King Antiochus Epiphanes and what he's doing and what's happening. So Israel's in their state. They are still around Syria. They have their land. We're going to see now what's going to transpire with this king here, where he came from as well. All right, so we're going to go once again to the etymology of BCE.
Etymology of BCE. BCE, initialism, acronym for Before Common Era or Before Christian Era, 1881. C, Common Era, Christian Era.
All right. So once again, it's before Common Era. All right. It's before Common Era that they try to say it is, but it's really before Christian Era. All right. It's before Christian Era. When they try to take out Christianity, this is where we get into what do you mean common? What was the common era? How did it become a common era? All right, it's not making full sense, but they have to take you away from the Christian thought somehow. All right, so we're going to go now to the book of Flavius Josephus, The War of the Jews, book 1, and he's going to take us into a little segue about what happened with Antiochus Epiphanes. All right, so continue for us.
It's the book of Josephus, The War of the Jews, book 1. Chapter 1. At the same time that Antiochus, who was called Epiphanes, had a quarrel with the sixth Ptolemy about his right to the whole country of Syria, a great sedition fell among the men of the power in Judea, and they had a contention about obtaining the government, while each of those that were of dignity could not endure to be subject to their equals. However, Onias, one of the high priests, got the better and cast the sons of Tobias out of the city, who fled to Antiochus and besought him to make use of them for his leaders and to make an expedition into Judea.
All right, so here we have Antiochus, all right, is having a quarrel with the sixth Ptolemy. All right, so there's a whole bunch. So this time of era, we're going to see that there's a whole bunch of Antiochuses. All right, so we're at the fourth one right now. So you get confused. You see different ones. Right? So a whole bunch of Antiochuses. All right, his father's named Antiochus. You're going to see that as well. All right, and also there's a whole lot of Ptolemy. So you're going to see Ptolemy. All right, we're going to see a whole couple of individuals in this. We're going to also see. We're going to also see King Darius. We're going to also see King Demetrius. We're going to also see maybe Cleopatra. All right, Cleopatra is there with them as well. So there's a whole bunch of individuals that we're going to go and see in this whole time period. Because once again, this is right before the coming of Christ. The Bible, at King Cyrus part, it's very clear. But after that, there's nothing really spoken about unless you're going to go to the Apocrypha, which that's the era we're going to clean up. Why the Apocrypha is important, because it lets us know what's happening before Christ comes on the scene. All right, we're trying to get all that history and what happened with the image of God during that time to where we can now zone in on when Christ comes and what's going on when Christ comes. We can clearly see now after we go through all of this stuff. All right, so continue for us.
The king, being thereto disposed beforehand, complied with them, and came upon the Jews with a great army, and took their city by force, and slew a great multitude of those that favored Ptolemy, and sent out his soldiers to plunder them without mercy. He also spoiled the temple, and put a stop to the constant practice of offering a daily sacrifice of expiation for 3 years and 6 months. But Onias, the high priest, fled to Ptolemy, and received a place from him in the Nomus of Heliopolis, where he built a city resembling Jerusalem, and a temple that was like its temple, concerning which we shall speak more in its proper place hereafter.
All right. So here again, so Antiochus. So this is why some people say the thing of Daniel in the weeks, it could have been fulfilled. There's a whole lot of things here which we're seeing that a lot of the stuff is happening right now, and we're gonna see exactly what happened. All right. Because we're seeing the sacrifices were stopped 3.5 years. This whole thing is going here as well. All right. Which was spoken of in Daniel. All right. And this is the newly erected temple. So we're going to see as well, because once again, this is the temple that is being built, that was built by, proclamated to be built by King Cyrus. All right. And now it's here, and now we're seeing it being plundered and stuff. So we're going to get to all these different temples. There's a story here that they're not really showing us clear as well. All right. That's not being fulfilled. So the sacrifices are stopped for 3 years, 6 months here. All right. For 3 years and 6 months, he's attacking the Jews. He's attacking Jerusalem. He's plundering the temple that was erected, or the proclamation that was sent out to erect this temple by King Cyrus. All right. So continue for us.
Verse 2. Now Antiochus was not satisfied either with his unexpected taking the city, or with its pillage, or with the great slaughter he had made there, but being overcome with his violent passions, and remembering what he had suffered during the siege, he compelled the Jews to dissolve the laws of their country, and to keep their infants uncircumcised, and to sacrifice swine's flesh upon the altar, against which they all opposed themselves. And the most approved among them were put to death.
All right, so he made them to sacrifice swine's flesh. We all went to that part multiple times with the mother and her, I believe, 7 sons. I think the son was 7 sons. All right, and her having to put on the stomach and the gut of a man. All right, and hold her emotions down so that she could be able to stomach her sons being slaughtered in the name of the Most High for his law, and understand that they're going to be okay. They're going to be in the kingdom. You don't want them to commit trespass against the Father. You don't know where their body parts came from, how it came together, what their face was going to look like. God did all of that. So God can replace and get back all of that. Believe. All right, she had to do that. But once again, we're seeing Antiochus was putting the press on the Israelites and making them commit these sins against the image of God once again. So continue for us.
Bacchus also, who was sent up to keep the fortresses, having these wicked commands joined to his own natural barbarity, indulged all sorts of the extremist wickedness, and tormented the worthiest of the inhabitants, man by man, and threatened their city every day with open destruction, till at length he provoked the poor sufferers by the extremity of his wicked doings to avenge themselves. Accordingly, Matthias, the son of Asmoneus, one of the priests who lived in a village called Modin, armed himself, together with his own family, which had 5 sons of his in it, and slew Bacchus with daggers. And thereupon, out of the fear of the many garrisons of the enemy, he fled to the mountains. And so many of the people followed him, that he was encouraged to come down from the mountains and to give battle to Antiochus' generals. When he beat them, he drove them out of Judea. So he came to the government by this his success, and became the prince of his own people by their own free consent, and then died, leaving the government to Judas, his eldest son.
All right, so Matthias is there. He's a man from Modin. All right, and you're going to see that this whole book of Maccabees. So we're going to go you need to understand who these Maccabees are and their sons and why their era is important. Because without them in their era, Israel's completely given into the Gentiles. All right, so it's important to understand what is it that they did. So we're getting the quick overview from Josephus, then we're going to hone down on what they did exactly and kind of skip through their part because we can't read all the whole part. It's going to be very long. It's already long already. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 4. Now Judas, supposing that Antiochus will not lie still, gathered an army out of his own countrymen, and was the first that made a league of friendship with the Romans, and drove Epiphanes out of the country, when he had made a second expedition into it, and this by giving him a great defeat there. And when he was warned by this great success, he made an assault upon the garrison that was in the city, for it had not been cut off hitherto. So he ejected them out of the upper city, and drove the soldiers into the lower, which part of the city was called the citadel. He then got the temple under his power, and cleansed the whole place, and walled it round about, and made new vessels for sacred ministrations, and brought them into the temple, because the former vessels had been profaned. He also built another altar, and began to offer the sacrifices. And when the city had already received its sacred constitution again, Antiochus died, whose son Antiochus succeeded him in the kingdom, and in his hatred to Jews also.
All right, so Antiochus, his son reigns in his stead again. So a next one reigns in his stead and comes up. So once again, we're going to see a whole lot here, all right, that Judas Maccabees, he's going to come, and we're going to come to that part where he makes a league with the Romans. You're going to also see our relationship with the Romans. We're going to see a couple of relationships that people might have thought was different and how all this comes. All of this is important because, once again, it all brings us to what was happening when Christ came here, all right, especially with the image of God, what was going on, all right. So we're going to go into this now and break this down. So what happens now? We're at King Cyrus. He's reigning. He's dealing with Assyria. We're going to go to a next king now who's going to come on the scene. All right, but we're going to first show how he came on the scene. And we're going to show that he took down Babylon. All right, Assyria takes down Babylon. We're actually going to read the ancient words of Darius. All right, and how he conquered Nebuchadnezzar. It's not really in the scriptures, but he himself has written himself on his takedown of these kingdoms and how the power switched hands to him. So we're at the ancient words of Darius on the Beth-Sitton rock.
The ancient words of Darius on the Beth-Sitton rock. Translation of the inscription, column 1. I am Darius, the great king, the king of kings, the king of Persia, the king of the provinces, the son of Hystaspes, the grandson of Arsamas, the Achaemenian. Says Darius the king, my father was Hystaspes, of Hystaspes, the father of Arsamas the father of Ariarmes, of the Ariarmes. The father was Thespes, of Thespes, the father of Achaemenes. Says Darius the king, on that account we were Achaemenians. From antiquity we have descended. From antiquity those of our race have been kings. They are 8 of my race who have been kings before me. I am the 9th. For a very long time we have been kings. By the grace of Ormazad I am king. Ormazad has granted me the empire. These are the countries which belong to me. By the grace of Ormazad I have become king of them.
All right, so I'm not sure who Ormazad is, but that's the god that he's claiming he got his dominion from. All right, so once again, when we see King Cyrus realize God gave him his dominion, we've seen him erect him a temple. So this goes back to our lesson on the monarchy versus republics. All right, and that kings know who's giving them a power. They know it's a God giving them a power. They're just not really acquainted with who, and that brings us into the Most High slowly revealing himself to the kings to let them know where they got that power from. And we read Solomon's writings in Wisdom of Solomon 6 that he let them know your sovereignty came from God. All right. But they didn't really know God. They don't know God, but they know their power came from God, going back to heaven's mandate that governed Asia and their kingdoms over there. All right. So heaven's mandate governed Asia and their kingdoms over there. All right. So they know who's giving them this power. All right. So the nations know there's some power giving them this power. This is why we're reading his words, and he's giving praise to whoever Ormazad is. I'm pretty sure it's not the God of Israel. All right, but he's saying because of him and his grace, he's become king over these places. So continue for us.
Says Darius the king, these are the countries which belong to me. By the grace of Ormazad, I have become king of them. Persia, Susania, Babylonia, Assyria, Arabia, Egypt, those which are of the sea, Sparta, Ionia, Media, Armenia, Cappadocia, Parthia, Zarangia, Aria, Chorasmia, Bactria, Sogdiana, Gandera, the Sasai, the Satagides, Arocosia, and Mysia, in all 23 provinces.
All right, so the Sasai, they're saying, the historians are saying that is the sons of Isaac, and that is interpretation in their language for the sons of Isaac. So once again, they're not going to call them Israelites or this, but they're saying this is the sons of Isaac. All right.
Says Darius the king, then I proceeded to Babylon against that Nandithabilis, who was called Nebuchadrezzar.
All right, so in their language and whatever, they're calling him Nebuchadrezzar. All right, in the Bible, it's Nebuchadnezzar. All right, but we see the connection and all of that. So if he's taking down Nebuchadnezzar, he has to come across the Israelites and he has to reign over them too. That means they have to be in this writing somewhere. All right, and this is where they're going into etymologists and all of that. So if you're just looking at it, you're like, oh, how is that Isaac? But etymologists and people who trace words, they know how that goes back to S-A-K, Sac, and how Sac goes back to Isaac and the little abbreviations going through all of this. All right, but continue for us. And going back to Anglo-Saxons, all right? Anglo-Saxons going back to sons of Isaac, all of that. So same thing, all right? So continue.
The forces of Nandithabilis held the Tigris. There they had come, and they had boats. Then I divided my army. One portion I supplied with camels, the other I mounted on horses. Ormazad brought help to me. By the grace of Ormazad, I succeeded in passing the Tigris. Then I entirely defeated the army of the Nandithabilis. On the 27th day of the month of Atriatia, 9th month. Then it was that we thus fought. Then I marched against Babylon. When I arrived near Babylon, the city named Zazana, upon the Euphrates, there that Nandithabilis, who was called Nebuchadrezzar, came with a force before me, offering battle. Then we fought a battle. Ormazad brought help to me. By the grace of Ormazad, I entirely defeated the force of Nandithabilis. A part of the army was driven into the water. The water destroyed them. On the 2nd day of the month, Anamaka, 10th month, then it was that we thus fought the battle.
King Darius is taking over the reins now. We're showing how Babylon goes down, Assyria takes over, he's taking over the kingdoms over there, and now we're going to see Israel wrapped up in all of Assyria now, because Assyria's taking down Babylon, all right, who took down the Jews, and now the Jews are getting back acquainted with Assyria, and Syria is who the 10 tribes were under. So I'm going to go into who Ormazad is, just so we're clear on who this guy is praising.
Ahura Mazda, Romanized, Ahura Mazda, Persian, Romanized, Ahura Mazda, also known as Oromazdes, or Ormazad, or Ahura Mazda, Aramazd, Ormazd, Ormaz, and Hormuz is the creator deity in Zoroastrianism. He is the first and most frequently invoked spirit in the Yasna. The literal meaning of the word Ahura is Lord, and that of Mazda is wisdom.
Right, so he is Lord Wisdom. This is who he's calling on, Ora Mazda. This is a god of Zoroastrianism. That's who Darius was calling on, saying gave him the kingdom and the reigns, which also connects to the importance of these kings understanding who gave them that. So when King Cyrus realized this came from the God of Israel, this is why he erected him a temple, because these kings, they praise this. Now, once again, we're in a world where there's not that much kings. We just had a queen that died. What we've been trying to tell people is that these people, they're attached and they understand the spiritual and they understand the gods that are giving them power over the earth. And when you have a Christian one like Queen Elizabeth, understand that they understand what's going on. All right? And that her and she is going to be different from a prime minister or any of them, because they're not given a kingdom from God. All right? We're now dealing with people who are ruling under republics. They're not monarchies. They're not set up in the image of God, as God is sovereign. And for him to pass on his sovereignty to you, that's him bestowing his likeness onto you. All right, and that's how they get immunity from a whole bunch of different things. So this is very much connects into our day and time right now. All right, to understand that they believe in God. So if you're in this, especially in Canada, we have the queen over us. She's the actual queen. She knows who gave her that power. She tells you that it came from God. They tell you this. All right, understand that they know more than what they are showing. So we're going to continue forward.
It's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chetam, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece.
All right, so we have King Darius who popped up, all right, and we've seen how he took over and he was reigning in Babylon and all of that. Now we have Alexander coming up, and Alexander is going to slew Darius, all right, and he's reigning in his stead, all right, and this is the Alexander from Greece, the Greek, all right. Continue for us.
Verse 2. And made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. He gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries, and nations, and kings, who became tributaries unto him.
All right, so Alexander rised up. He slews Darius, who came up and said, oh, I got this from my God. Alexander slews him, and now he's coming up and slewing kings. So we're going through this time where there's a lot of battle back and forth between people, their gods, them trying to get power, men trying to rise up now. All right, so he's slewing him, and they're doing all of this, and he's slewing the kings, and now they're becoming tributaries onto him. Alexander is reigning supreme. Continue for us.
Verse 5. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them, while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then died. And his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks.
All right, so Antiochus became sick. He passes. All right. His servants bear rule, everyone in his place. He put crowns on all of them. So did their sons after them many years. Evils were multiplied. There came out a wicked root out of them, named Antiochus Epiphanes. All right, and his son also, his father, all right, was the Antiochus, who was hostage at Rome. So it's all could become confusing because there's a whole bunch of different people that's named after each other. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 11. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow.
All right, so now they're seeing things happen to them. They keep going under these people, that people. Israel now wants to make a covenant with the heathen, all right, because they're seeing sorrows and troubles come upon them. That's coming upon them for the sins against the image of God, all right. And now, instead of coming to God, they're like, let's make a deal with the nations, all right. Let's see what this deal is. Continue.
Verse 12. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen.
All right, so they went to the king. The king is now giving them license that you can now do after the ordinance of the heathen. Continue.
Verse 14. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief.
All right, so a lot of people have to understand, all right, that sports, all right, these places of exercise, the gym, this all started, all right, with the heathens, all right, and it's all to distract people and take people away from the Most High and what they're doing. This is where it all came from, all right. And if you notice, these sports and all that, they're going to make it, most of them end up on the weekend and all of that, all right. So this is where we're at now. They're there, they're like, yo, how can we do the things that the heathen, like, all right, places of exercise. You're probably wondering, what's the importance of places of exercise here? All right, once again, they need to do something. These sports and all of this makes these people devoted to these things, taking away their devotion from God. Also, serving these gods through these sports, all right? They don't know that the heathen set these sports up, all right, to serve their gods, especially the Olympics, things like that. These are ceremonies to gods in the form of exercises, all right? So here, Israel building a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. And they made themselves uncircumcised, and they forsook the holy covenant. Continue for us.
Verse 16. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him, and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof.
So once again, the places of exercise, all right? And now he's entering into Egypt, and he's trying to take Egypt down. He made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. Ptolemy was afraid, fled, many were wounded. They got the strongholds in the city and the land. He took the spoils. So he ended up taking down Egypt and doing all of that. All right. So we're now going to go and zone in now on Matthias. We already read this in the Josephus, but now this is a little more detail on what happened at this time. So we're at Matthias and his sons and them seeing what's happening to Israel after all of this. All right. We're at 1 Maccabees 2:1.
This is the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 1, out of the Apocrypha. In those days arose Matthias, Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Joarib, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons, Johanan, called Caddis, Simon, called Thassi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar, called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphis.
All right. So these are his sons, and you could actually call these people the Maccabees, but the Maccabees actually came from Judas, who was called Maccabeus, all right, because of how he's doing. All right, these are the sons. This is the whole point of the book of the Maccabees. These are the gentlemen who rose up and are righteous, battling it out at a time where Israel would have just went straight into idol worship. All right, because of them, they're able to at least battle back sometime and sustain the kingdom at certain points, or else it would have just been darkness until Christ comes. So if it wasn't for them constantly coming and fighting, then it wouldn't be that. That's why we have the book of the Maccabees that shows us all of these things, right? Especially the Feast of Dedication that comes from there. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 6. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and of the holy city? and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation had not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she has become a bondslave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste, and the Gentile hath profaned it. To what end therefore shall we live any longer? Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes, and put on sackcloth, and mourn very sore.
All right, so Mattathias, all right, is here seeing the state of the people, Jerusalem, the blasphemies that there's being committed, the sins that's being committed, all right, against the image of God. All right, the idols that's going on, all right, the things that's happening to the sanctuary, it being delivered, the temple becoming as a man without glory. This is the same temple erected by King Cyrus, the proclamation that went out. Now this is what's happening to it, and a whole bunch of stuff keep happening. All right, now they're like, how can we live any longer? They're lamenting about this whole thing. We're going to see what comes on their spirit to do. All right, we're at 1 Maccabees 2 and 15.
This is the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 15, out of the Apocrypha. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city motive to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words, to go from our religion either on the right hand or the left.
All right. So Mattathias, they're coming to them and they're saying, hey, you guys come worship this king's idols and his commandment. All right. Do this worship. All right. Like as all the heathen have done. And also the men of Judah also. So the Israelites are doing this also. All right. And such as remain at Jerusalem. So shall thou house be in number with the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver, gold, many reward. So they're trying to bribe them to be, hey, just come. Everyone else is doing it. Your household, the only household resisting right now. Your Jews is doing it. Heathens doing it. Everyone's doing it. Mattathias now. This is why this is the book of Maccabees. And this is all about his sons and the different sons. We're gonna get a close look at what their purposes is. All right, but they're standing up and he's saying, yo, though everybody fall away from their religion, their gods, they're dealing with sports and dealing with their idols that you set up, we ain't gonna do that. All right, they're gonna deal with the covenant of their fathers. All right, continue for us. Oh yes. All right, so they're not gonna hearken to the king's words. They're not gonna go from their religion and their God. All right, so we're gonna continue at 1 Maccabees 2:23.
All right, it's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 23. Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar.
All right. So when he left, he just leaves from speaking these harsh words to the king. He goes and he sees a Jew come and sacrifice on the altar that was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. So he's like, oh, I just talk all of this and there's going to be a Jew come up past me and do this? And he was inflamed with zeal. All right. He wanted to judge him. All right. And there he goes and he slews him who's upon the altar. All right. Continue for us.
Verse 25. Also, the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri, the son of Salem. And Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left all that they ever had in the city.
All right, so they're showing that he is like Phinehas. And Phinehas, all right, these are the forefathers and the priesthood that the sons of Zadok are coming out. All right, this is the first one. And he slew the man the same way. He had that same spirit about him to want to protect the law. And this is what Mattathias has. And this is why the Most High is with them. And now we have the book of Maccabees during this time when Israel is, they don't care about nothing. All right, they're going to serve those gods. They're going to deal with the image. This is why the book of Maccabees is very important, because without understanding what's happening here, we're not really going to understand what's happening when Christ comes on the scene, because there's so much years missing from the Old Testament to there. All right, and a lot of things happening to why Christ is coming, the whole thing. There's a whole lot that we're going to get into. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 29. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. Now when it was told the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem in the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandments were gone down into secret places in the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number. And having overtaken them, they encamped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day.
All right. So now we're here now. And he's saying he's going to keep these things. All right. And they're going to do these things. All right. And he and his sons fled to the mountains. All right. And they're getting wind of this. All right, and they're now coming to try to come against them, and they're pursuing after them, a great number. All right, and they're trying to come against them and war against them on the Sabbath. So this is going to bring us to everything now. All right, so they're trying to deal with them with the idols, and now the idols and the Sabbath are basically falling on the same day now, this whole problem. All right, so we're at 1 Maccabees 2 and 33.
It's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 33, out of the Apocrypha. And he said unto them, Let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. But they said, We will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day.
All right, so he's saying to come out and deal with the idol, all right? Worship the image that provokes. All right, they're saying we ain't coming out to worship the image that provokes, and as well, we're not going to profane the Sabbath. There's two things caught up on the Jews right now. All right, so continue.
Verse 35. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, Let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us, that ye put us to death wrongfully. So they arose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them, with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people.
All right, so this is how much people wanted to keep the Sabbath, because they're faced now with, these people are trying to come against us. They want us to worship this thing, but it's the Sabbath as well, where it means we can't do nothing on the Sabbath. So these are the first people we're seeing. This is what it's like when you're dealing with the Sabbath. You believe that you can't break this for nothing. All right, for nothing. Sometimes we need to come back to that, because this is what trains you. Because now when the Sabbath comes, some people will be like, oh, I could do this and I could do that. And, and it's not like, okay, things come up and you're trying to okay, I'm always at the Sabbath, so I'm using this now to do something else. But they're using this as, oh, you know what? Maybe I could do other things on the Sabbath. And no, the reason why God gave Israel this stuff is because you coming on the Sabbath teaches you something, all right? The one day that your focus is on God and building God's kingdom, all right? And not to do any other work on that day, nothing else but that. And it was so serious that these men not even gonna fight for their lives on that day, because we don't do nothing on this day but deal with God. We don't even fight, all right? And they're saying let us die in our innocency because they're dealing with the Sabbath, and they allow that to happen. Their wives, their children, all of that gets slaughtered through that. Now, all right, they died in their righteousness and stuff, but we're gonna see the next mindset to have as well. So continue to us, verse 39.
Verse 39. Now when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, if we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him. Neither will we die, all, as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places.
All right, so they had to come now. Mattathias had to come. So he wasn't the one of those ones. They're mourning for those people, and they're saying, yo, we cannot do as our brethren have done, all right, and fight not for our lives and the laws against the heathen, all right, that they are going to quickly root them out of the earth. If that's your mindset that you're living on, oh, let's die in our righteousness, let's keep this day, or they're coming to us on the Sabbath. You think that if the enemy knows you can't do something on the Sabbath, that's the day they're going to come out, all right? So they have to say, you know what, we're going to make this decree. Whoever comes to battle with us on these days, we're going to battle with them. We ain't going to die as our brethren died in the secret places. So they had to make this pact, because that's how serious keeping the Sabbath is, all right? Not doing anything for the Lord, not even engaging in fight, nothing, because they have to understand this day is for the Lord. This day is for the building up of the kingdom, getting to know your brethren, your sisterin. During the week, you're getting to know all the worldly people. Those people ain't going to be in the kingdom, all right? Because who's going to be in the kingdom is people that's dealing with God. So unless those people are part of a church that's with Christ, and you're dealing with other Christians, and you're around other Christians during the week, who you around is people who's going to perish. All right? You're not building with them. You could build with them, but at the end of the day, they're going someplace else, or unless you're all going to the same place, and there's something we don't clearly know. All right? But continue for us.
Verse 42. Then came there unto him a company of Assyrians, who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the law. Also, all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them, and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces, and smote sinful men in their anger, and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathen for succor.
All right, so they're killing them, they're dealing with them, they're defeating these enemies, these sinful men. They're cleansing out the area of all these wicked people. All right, and those who are of Jews who are not with them, they're fleeing to the heathen for help. All right, continue.
Verse 45. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars, and what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. Verse 47. They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand. So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles, and out of the hand of kings. Neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, Now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers.
All right, so Mattathias is the father of these people who are understood to be Maccabees, all right? And he's now he's telling them the time that we're at, the pride and rebuke has gotten strength. It's strong right now. If they're not there, it's all taken over, all right? He's telling them to be zealous for the law, give your lives to the covenant of the Father, worship the true image of God, all right? So this is what's holding everything in place, the Maccabees, all right? So we're going to go to 1 Maccabees 2 and 51.
It's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 51. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, so shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Joseph in the time of his distress kept the commandment, and was made Lord of Egypt. Phinehas our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Yeshahiah for this was a different class. Jesus, for fulfilling the word, was made a judge in Israel. Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up into heaven. Ananias, Azarias, and Misael, by believing, were saved out of the flame. Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of lions. And thus consider ye throughout all ages, that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome.
All right, so he has to break down once again all the great things and all the things that they did. All right, and that's Joshua in the Old Testament. All right, that he made judge in Israel. All right, and all the things that they had to do. All these men that kept this faith and went against the image that provokes, and how each time they came out victorious, and this is their time to do the same. He's giving them courage. All right, continue for us.
Verse 62. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into his dust, and his thought is come to nothing. Wherefore, ye, my sons, be valiant, and show yourselves men in the behalf of the law, for by it shall ye obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Simon is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him, always. He shall be a father unto you.
All right, so he's telling him, Simon, your brother is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him always. He shall be a father unto you. So pay attention. So he's setting up the brothers now, and he's putting the brothers in position. So Simon is the one that's going to be like the father. Why is he going to be like the father? Because he gives counsel. He takes counsel. All right, so this is going to be the best one to take advice from. This is the fatherly figure you come to. You want to ask something? Ask Simon. Once again, because he's a man of counsel. And this week we were going into about counsel. All right, on the weekend, Deacon Anthony went into that for us. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 66. As for Judas Maccabeus, he hath been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain and fight the battle of the people.
All right, so Judas Maccabees. All right, so this is the one that a lot of people know about. All right, he's the one that's valiant. He's the strong one. He's the one he's the hammer. That's what the Maccabees is, I believe, the hammer. All right, and he's the one that's going to be fighting for the people. He's the captain for the wars. All right, continue.
Verse 67. Take also unto you all those that observe the law, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandments of the law. So he blessed them, and was gathered to his fathers.
All right, so now a whole thing goes. They go in, they fight these people, they take them over. All of this stuff is happening. We're now going to go to important little parts in the Maccabean history that connect to what we're doing. All right, we're going to try to get through a couple more of these before we stop. And then next week, we're basically going to be at what's transpiring when Christ comes, and going into crisis time with the image of God. All right, so continue for us.
1 Maccabees chapter 8, verse 1. Now Judas had heard of the fame of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them.
All right, so Judas is on the scene, and the Romans are coming up now. So this is very important, because the Romans is still tying into our days right now. All right, this is the beginning of the Roman Empire. All right, so Judas all right, who's the one fighting for the laws in this time, is now hearing the Romans. Fame is going out. The Romans are on their way up. The Romans are coming up, all right, and they're becoming mighty, valiant man, all right. But also, let's take this about the Romans, and they're lovingly accept all that join themselves onto them, all right, and make league and enmity with all that came onto them. So they're peaceable people that like to make friends with people, all right. So this is how you might think the Romans came on the scene, is not how it is. They're making peace with people and inviting people to come make peace with them. And now Judas is there hearing this, and he's going to do the same. So continue for us.
Verse 2. And that they were men of great valor. It was told him also their wars and noble acts which they had done among the Galatians, and how they had conquered them and brought them under tribute, and what they had done in the country of Spain for the winning of the mines of the silver and gold which is there.
All right, so we are seeing now what they're doing. They're men of great valor. All right, it's told to them about their wars, their noble acts. They did it among the Galatians. They conquered the Galatians. They put them under tribute. Now they're gone into Spain. They took down Spain. All right, they're taking the mines, the gold, the silver. This is the strengthening of the nation, the kingdom that's still strong and in place right now. All right, continue for us.
Verse 4. And that by their policy and patience they had conquered all the place, though it were very far from them. And the kings also that came against them from the uttermost part of the earth, till they had discomfited them, and given them a great overthrow, so that the rest did give them tribute every year.
All right, so that by policy and patience they conquered all the place. So how do the Romans operate? They operate through policies and they operate through patience. They're not, you didn't see, oh, they went and they made war with this, like how we're just going through every second war. They're very patient through their policies, through they're getting people to make pacts with them. This is how they're able to take over eventually these places. All right, continue for us.
Verse 5. Beside this, how they had discomfited in battle Philip and Perseus, king of the Citans, with others that lifted up themselves against them and had overcome them. How also Antiochus, the great king of Asia, that came against them in battle, having 120 elephants with horsemen and chariots, and a very great army, was discomfited by them. And how they took him alive and covenanted that he and such as reigned after him should pay a great tribute, and give hostages, and that which was agreed upon, and that country of India and Media and Lydia, and of the goodliest countries, which they took of him and gave to King Eumenes.
All right, so we're seeing Antiochus is trying to come up against them in battle and all of this. All right, so Antiochus, all right, continue for us.
Verse 9. Moreover, how the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them, and that they, having knowledge thereof, sent against them a certain captain, and fighting with them slew many of them, and carried away captives their wives and their children, and spoiled them, and took possession of their lands, and pulled down their strongholds, and brought them to be their servants unto this day.
All right, so now they're taking over. So this is the Romans fighting. The Grecians are there. They're taking down the Grecians. All right, the Grecians are taking down Antiochus. All of them try to stop what is happening with Rome, but Rome is coming up. All right, continue.
Verse 11. It was told him besides how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them. But with their friends and such as relied upon them, they kept amity, and that they had conquered kingdoms both far and nigh, insomuch as all that heard of their name were afraid of them. Also that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom again they displace. Finally, that they were greatly exalted. Yet for all this none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a senate house, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people, to the end that they might be well ordered.
All right, so they're showing you what's happening with these people, how they're coming up, they're taking down the aisles and anything that resists them. All right, and they're conquering these kingdoms, and they have friends in these kingdoms as well. All right, and their name, those who heard their name was afraid of them. All right, and also that they would help to a kingdom, those that reign. And they displayed, finally they were greatly exalted. So they also was exalted. All right, and though they had all this fame and all of that, these people, none of them put a crown on themselves. So this is the first entrance of a republic. Remember, we've been speaking about a republic. All right, now Israel had the people trying to convince the kings to do things, and they did it, but their system of government wasn't a republic. This is the first time that a system of government is a republic. All right, and he's fighting against kings, but they're not a nation of kings. All right, they are now setting up a republic. They have a senate house. They have all of this. All right, so this is the first time in history this is taking place. This is the image that the nations are dealing with right now. So they're going away from monarchy. Once again, going back to our lesson, monarchy versus republic. All right, the Most High's nations, how he set the nations up with kings and stuff. All right, this first thing is coming in from the Romans, where we have a republic, where we have someone who doesn't wear a crown, where we're setting up policies, where we're setting up a senate house, where we're doing all of this, but we don't have a king. All right, this is the first time in history this is happening. All right, it's happening under the Romans, and this is happening before Christ even enters on the scene. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 16. And that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that were all obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. In consideration of these things, Judas chose Eupolemus, the son of John, the son of Echos, and Jason, the son of Eleazar, and sent them to Rome, to make a league of amity and confederacy with them.
All right, so them hearing this, all right, so they committed to their government to one man every year. So they're having election, it seems, every year at that time. All right, and that one man would become president over their country. This is the first president. All right, president being popping up in the scriptures. In the other scriptures, you're not going to see presidency anywhere, any of that. All right, but it seems like they don't want you to know where Rome came from and how they came up in the system in play. This is why it's not in the Bible. All right, but this is presidency where it starts from. All right, the Romans, their empire that came up was different from everybody else. They had a different way about conquering that other kings and people never did, and they weren't prideful. They're patient. They're all of that. All right, and we can see you're that when you could be a king, and they're saying we're not going to be kings. We're going to have this order about themselves, about their kingdom, where they're going to have all this voting and senate house, and these are stuff that's never been done in the earth before. All right, and they're doing. All right, and Judas is now sending chosen men to go to Rome to make league and confederacy with Rome. You might not know that Israel wanted to make league and confederacy with Rome. We're going to continue.
Verse 18. And to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them, for they saw that the kingdom of the Grecians did oppress Israel with servitude. They went therefore to Rome, which was a very great journey, and came into the Senate, where they spake and said, Judas Maccabeus with his brethren and the people of the Jews have sent us unto you, to make a confederacy and peace with you, and that we might be registered your confederates and friends.
All right, so here we have, this is very important history. This is our confederacy. All right, the Israelites and Rome are coming onto each other to become friends. All right, and they're there at the Senate. They go to Rome, and they're now there at the Senate, and they're now going and they're saying we want to be confederates and friends, and they're going to write out and tell them what they believe they can make, how this agreement can go on. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 23. Good success be to the Romans and to the people of the Jews, by sea and by land forever. and the sword also, and the enemy be far from them. If there come first any war upon the Romans or any of their confederates throughout all their dominion, the people of the Jews shall help them, as the time shall be appointed with all their heart. Neither shall they give anything unto them that make war upon them, or aid them with victuals, weapons, money, or ships, as it had seemed good unto the Romans. But they shall keep their covenants without taking anything but therefore.
All right, so here we see that they're making this confederacy. This kind of, if you go and look at like America and Morocco, America and Libya's agreements, their treaties, you can see this is how even today the same thing. All right, if you see my people, don't touch my people, I won't touch your people. Da, 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 da. This is how the agreements is going. So this is what's happening in between Israel and Rome. So people might not know that Israel and Rome have peace between each other. All right, that's how it started off. Continue.
Verse 27. In the same manner also, if war come upon the nation of the Jews, the Romans shall help them with all their heart, according as the time shall be appointed them. Neither shall victuals be given to them that take part against them, or weapons, or money, or ships, as it had seemed good to the Romans. But they shall keep their covenants, and that without deceit. According to these articles did the Romans make a covenant with the people of the Jews. Howbeit, if hereafter the one party or the other shall drink to meat to add, shall think to meat to add or diminish anything, they may do it at their pleasures. And whatsoever they shall add or take away shall be ratified.
All right, so if one party or other shall think to meet or add or diminish, they may do it at their pleasure. Whatsoever they shall add or take away shall be ratified. So they're going to ratify this treaty agreement with each other. So once again, this is a complete peace treaty between the Romans and Israel. All right, continue.
Verse 31. And as touching the evils that Demetrius doeth to the Jews, we have written unto him, saying, Wherefore thou made thy yoke heavy upon our friend and confederates the Jews? If therefore they complain any more against thee, we will do them justice and fight with thee by sea and by land.
All right, so Demetrius, all right, another king, all right, he's doing things to the Jews. They're going to write to them too and saying, yo, all right, you're putting yoke heavy upon our friends and confederates, the Jews. All right, we're going to fight with them and take you down. So the whole relationship of Israel and Rome is a friendly relationship to begin. All right, it might confuse some people. All right, so they're friends to begin with. All right, Rome is making friends with them. All right, and Rome is actually helping them fight their battles that they have. Judas Maccabees made a covenant with them. All right, a treaty with them. So we're going to go to 1 Maccabees 9 and 23.
It's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 9, verse 23. Now after the death of Judas, the wicked began to put forth their heads in all their coast of Israel. And there arose up all such as wrought iniquity.
All right, so now Judas is down now, the one that was fighting, and now Israel's going back into their sin, back into the idol worship, back into all of this. We know when this happens, the Most High brings things upon them, all right? Because now the people that's keeping everything down, you're not following them no more, and they're going back into iniquity, which they were already dealing with iniquity, but these people at least kept some men and turned some men to follow them and be with them, all right? And now that one has died, the leader, the one that was the warrior, now they're doing sin again, all right? Continue.
Verse 24. In those days also was there a great famine, by reason whereof the country revolted and went with them. Then Bacchus chose the wicked men and made them lords of the country. And they made inquiry and search for Judas's friends, and brought them unto Bacchus, who took vengeance of them and used them despitefully. So was there a great affliction in Israel, the like whereof was not since the time that a prophet was not seen among them. For this cause all Judas's friends came together and said unto Jonathan, Since thy brother Judas died, we have no man like him to go forth against our enemies. And Bacchus and against them of our nation that are adversaries to us. Now therefore we have chosen thee this day to be our prince and captain in his stead, that thou mayest fight our battles. Upon this Jonathan took the governance upon him at that time, and rose up instead of his brother Judas. But when Bacchus got knowledge thereof, he sought for to slay him.
All right, so they're going now against the enemy Bacchus, and now Judas has passed. All right, and now they need a new man, and the new man is going to be Jonathan, and Jonathan is going to step up, and he's going to lead the people. All right, we're going to go to Maccabees 9 and 65.
It's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 9, verse 65. But Jonathan left his brother Simon in the city, and went forth himself into the country, and with a certain number went he forth. And he smote Odonaicus and his brethren, and the children of Phasaron, in their tent. And when he began to smite them, and came up with his forces, Simon and his company went out of the city, and burned up the engines of war, and fought against Bacchus, who was discomfited by them, and they afflicted him sore, for his counsel and travail was in vain. Wherefore he was very wroth at the wicked men that gave him counsel to come into the country, inasmuch as he slew many of them, and purposed to return into his own country. Whereof when Jonathan had knowledge, he sent ambassadors unto him, to the end he should make peace with him, and deliver them to prisoners. Which thing he accepted, and did according to his demands, and sware unto him that he would never do him harm all the days of his life. When therefore he had restored unto him the prisoners that he had taken aforetime out of the land of Judea, he returned and went his way into his own land, neither came he more into their borders. Thus the sword ceased from Israel. But Jonathan dwelt at Machmas, and began to govern the people, and he destroyed the ungodly men out of Israel.
All right, so Jonathan steps up, he fights off Bacchus, he defeats them. All right, he restores them. All right, and they restore the prisoners that was taken out of the land of Judea. The sword ceases from Israel. Jonathan is now the leader of the people. All right, we're going to go into this last part here, and then we'll commence until next week. All right. So we're at 1 Maccabees 10 and 1.
It's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 10, verse 1. In the 160th year, Alexander, the son of Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, went up and took Ptolemais, for the people had received him, by means whereof he reigned there.
All right, so this is not Alexander the Greek that was at the beginning. Once again, it can get confusing. This is an Alexander that now comes out of that wicked root that was Antiochus, surnamed Epiphany. He names his son Alexander names his son Alexander, who was named after the first Alexander. All right, continue.
Verse 2. Now when King Demetrius heard thereof, he gathered together an exceeding great host, and went forth against him to fight. Moreover, Demetrius sent letters unto Jonathan with loving words, so as he magnified him. For said he, let us first make peace with him, before he join with Alexander against us. Else he will remember all the evils that we have done against him, and against his brethren and his people. Wherefore he gave him authority to gather together an host, and to provide weapons, that he might aid him in battle. And he commanded also that the hostages that were in the tower should be delivered him. Then came Jonathan to Jerusalem, and read the letters in the audience of all the people, and of them that were in the tower, who were sore afraid when they heard that the king had given him authority to gather together an host. Whereupon they of the tower delivered their hostages unto Jonathan, and he delivered them unto their parents. This done, Jonathan settled himself in Jerusalem, and began to build and repair the city. And he commanded the workmen to build the walls and the Mount Zion, and about and about with square stones for fortification. And they did so. Then the strangers that were in the fortresses which Bacchus had built fled away, insomuch as every man left his place and went into his own country.
All right, so we're seeing that Jonathan once again strengthens a relationship with Demetrius, all right, and now he's able to go and have an army and once again cleanse the place at Jerusalem. All right, and everyone's shocked at what's going on.
It's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 10, verse 15. Now when King Alexander had heard what promises Demetrius had sent unto Jonathan, when also it was told him of the battles and noble acts which he and his brethren had done, and of the pains that they had endured, he said, Shall we find such another man? Now therefore we will make him our friend and confederate.
All right, so once again, a lot of confederacy is going towards Jonathan and the Maccabees because of what they're doing in the nation, seeing that God is with them. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 17. Upon this he wrote a letter and sent it unto him according to these words, saying, King Alexander to his brother Jonathan sendeth greeting. We have heard of thee, that thou art a man of great power, and meet to be our friend. Wherefore now this day we ordain thee to be the high priest of thy nation, and to be called the king's friend. And therewithal he sent him a purple robe and a crown of gold, and required thee to take our part, and keep friendship with us. So in the 7th month of the 160th year, at the feast of Tabernacles, Jonathan put on the holy robe, and gathered together forces, and provided much armor. Whereof when Demetrius heard, he was very sorry, and said, What have we done, that Alexander had prevented us in making amity with the Jews to strengthen himself? I also will write unto them words of encouragement, and promise them dignities and gifts, that I may have their aid.
All right, so Demetrius is hearing that Alexander is making a league with them. They're not fighting to make leagues with Israel because they don't want another enemy to have an advantage. All right, so this is what happens when you're dealing with the Most High and righteous with the Most High. Now people are fighting to make league and covenant with you, and this is what's happening here. So it's like, you're making covenant with them, I'm gonna make covenant with them. All right, and this is how they're getting their kind of peace in these times. But continue for us.
Verse 25. He sent unto them therefore to this effect, King Demetrius unto the people of the Jews sendeth greeting. Whereas ye have kept covenants with us, and continued in our friendship, not joining yourselves with our enemies, we have heard hereof, and are glad. Wherefore now continue ye still to be faithful unto us, and we will recompense you for the things ye do in our behalf, and will grant you many immunities, and give you rewards. And now do I free you, and for your sake I release all the Jews from tributes and from the custom of salt.
All right, so they are releasing all the Jews from tributes, from custom of salt, from everything. All right, continue.
And from crown taxes,
Mm-hmm.
and from that which appertaineth unto me to receive for the third part of the seed, and the half of the fruit of the trees. I release it from this day forth, so that they shall not be taken of the land of Judea, nor of the 3 governments which are added thereunto out of the country of Samaria and Galilee, from this day forth forevermore.
All right, so they're saying from this day forth forevermore, they ain't going to do these things and take away from them nor out these 3 governments. All right, continue.
Verse 31. Let Jerusalem also be holy and free, with the borders thereof, both from tenths and tributes. And as for the tower which is at Jerusalem, I yield up authority over it, and give the high priest, that he may set it in such men as he shall choose to keep it. Moreover, I freely set at liberty every one of the Jews that were carried captives out of the land of Judea into any part of the kingdom, and I will that all my officers remit tributes, even of their cattle. Furthermore, I will that all the feasts and Sabbaths and new moons and solemn days, and the 3 days before the feast, And the 3 days after the feast shall be of all immunity and freedom for all the Jews in my realm. Also, no man shall have authority to meddle with or to molest any of them in any matter. I will further that there be enrolled among the king's forces about 30,000 men for the Jews, unto whom pay shall be given as belongeth to all king's forces. And of them some shall be placed in the king's strongholds, of whom also shall be set over the affairs of the kingdom, which are of trust. And I will that their overseers and governors be of themselves, and that they live after their own laws, even as the king commanded in the land of Judea. And concerning the 3 governments that are added to Judea from the country of Samaria, let them be joined with Judea, that they may be reckoned to be under one, nor bore to obey other authority than the high priest.
All right, so they're now bringing everything back. All right, nothing separated. We've seen how long it's been separated. Kingdom here, kingdom there. Demetrius is now putting everything together now. All right, saying, all right, and the Most High is using this because we have Alexander, who's coming out of the Greeks. We have the Assyrians here, Demetrius out of the Persians. We have the Romans that's coming up. They're all kind of fighting for this power here, and they're all trying to make sure that they're good with the Jews so that one is not in the wrong with the Most High, and now the other can have an advantage over them and take their kingdom. So this is how they're able to bring everything back together based on this, and why the treaties are being written up to now give Israel their peace back. All right, so continue.
Verse 39. As for Ptolemy's and the land pertaining thereto, I give it as free gift to the sanctuary at Jerusalem for the necessary expenses of the sanctuary. Moreover, I give every year 15,000 shekels of silver out of the king's account, from the places appertaining, and all the overplus, which the officers paid not in as in former time, from henceforth shall be given toward the works of the temple. And beside this, the 5,000 shekels of silver, which they took from the uses of the temple out of the accounts year by year, even those things shall be released, because they appertain to the priests that minister. And whosoever they be that flee unto the temple at Jerusalem, or be within the liberties hereof, being indebted unto the king, or for any other matter, let them be at liberty, and all that they have in my realm. For the building also and repairing of the works of the sanctuary, expenses shall be given of the king's accounts. Yea, and for the building of the walls of Jerusalem, and for the fortifying thereof round about, expenses shall be given out of the king's accounts, as also for the building of the walls in Judea.
All right, so we're seeing expensive money coming out. Boom. Why are they doing it? Because they love Israel? Once again, it's because the fear of the Romans out. People that's fighting for power. People that are making covenants. Rome made the covenant right open with Israel. So they're all now scared that they have to make covenant as well, so that they're not in the bad graces of Israel and possibly could get taken over. All right, and this is why you're seeing so much love being bestowed upon Israel right now, through the form of covenant, all right, and treaties. But continue for us.
In verse 46. Now when Jonathan and the people heard these words, they gave no credit unto them, nor received them, because they remembered the great evil that he had done in Israel, for he had afflicted them very sore. But with Alexander they were well pleased, because he was the first that entreated of true peace with them, and they were confederate with him always. Then granted King Alexander great forces, encamped over against Demetrius. And after the 2 kings had joined battle, Demetrius' host fled, but Alexander followed after him and prevailed against him. And he continued the battle very sore until the sun went down. And that day was Demetrius slain.
All right, so Demetrius, all right, Israel respects Alexander's covenant, but they did not respect Demetrius, because they're like, this brother, he's only doing it because he's seeing the other nations coming now. All right, and we see once again what they're realizing is that if you're in Israel's bad grace, especially when they're with their God, that's going to fall on you and your kingdom could get taken. All right, that's what we see happen. Because they chose Alexander and their heart was with him, we see Demetrius is the one's kingdom that get taken down. So you can see why their focus is on pleasing Israel. All right. So just to wrap it all up, we're going to this last one scripture. And this is now the recovenanting with Rome again. All right. So Jonathan is doing with Rome. All right. So we're at 1 Maccabees 12:1.
This is the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 12, verse 1. Now when Jonathan saw that time served him, he chose certain men and sent them to Rome for to confirm and renew the friendship that they had with them. He sent letters also to Lacedaemonians and to other places for the same purpose. So they went on to Rome and entered into the Senate and said, Jonathan the high priest and the people of the Jews sent us unto you, to the end ye should renew the friendship which ye had with them, and lead as in former time. Upon this the Romans gave them letters unto the governors of every place, that they should bring them into the land of Judea peaceably.
All right, so they're making things with them, and now they're saying that the Romans are giving letters to the governors saying that they're going to bring them into the land of Judea peaceably. So we're seeing how they all start to come back into the land. What's happening, all these treaties in the world going out is reassembling Israel to their rightful place. Once again, all this is happening so that when Christ comes, we have Israel back in the land again. All right, and then we can see what's happening with the image of God again. But without the Maccabees, without all of this happening, without all these treaties, without all these things put into place, there's no Israel, there's no temple, there's no society for Christ to come back and now have this moment that we're reading about in the New Testament. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 5. And this is the copy of the letters which Jonathan wrote to the Lacedaemonians. Jonathan, the high priest, and the elders of the nation, and the priests, and the other of the Jews, unto the Lacedaemonians, their brethren, send greeting. There were letters sent in times past unto Onias the high priest from Darius, who reigned then among you, to signify that ye are our brethren, as the copy here underwritten doth specify.
All right, and that's those are the Spartans. Are they the Spartans? No, the Vikings. The Vikings, I believe the Vikings. Yes, the Lacedaemonians, who are them, and they're saying that we're their brethren. All right, which that's what we went to show that how they're over there and they're writing to them and their brethren. So they're writing to the Romans and they're writing to their brethren who's over there in Europe over there. All right, that's where you get the Vikings and all of this stuff from. All right, so continue.
Verse 8. At that time Onias entreated the ambassador that was sent honorably, and received the letters, wherein declaration was made of the league and friendship. Therefore we also, albeit we need none of these things, that we have the holy books of Scripture in our hands to comfort us, have nevertheless attempted to send unto you for the renewing of brotherhood and friendship, lest we should become strangers unto you altogether. For there is a long time past since ye sent unto us. We therefore at all times without ceasing, both in our feasts and other convenient days, do remember you in the sacrifices which we offer, and in our prayers. And reason is, and as it becometh us to think upon our brethren.
All right, so they're showing them, all right, and once again, they're sending peace because they're amongst the Romans. They're in Europe. They're making sure that they're at peace with them, and they're not going to try to convince the enemies to come against them. Once again, they're trying to come into their fullness of peace. Continue for us.
Verse 12. And we are right glad of your honor. As for yourselves, we have had great troubles and wars on every side, for as much as the kings that are round about us have fought against us. Howbeit, we would not be troublesome unto you, nor to others of our confederates and friends in these wars. For we have help from heaven that succoureth us, so as we are delivered from our enemies, and our enemies are brought under foot. For this cause we chose Mnemonius, the son of Antiochus, and Antipater, and Antipater, his son of Jason, and sent them unto the Romans to renew the amity that we had with them, and the former league. We commanded them also to go unto you, and to salute and to deliver you our letters concerning the renewing of our brotherhood. Wherefore now ye shall do well to give us an answer thereto. And this is the copy of the letters which Onias sent. Arius, the king of the Lacedaemonians, to Onias the high priest, greeting. It is found in writing that the Lacedaemonians and Jews are brethren, and that they are of the stock of Abraham. Now therefore, since this is come to our knowledge, ye shall do well to write unto us of your prosperity. We do write back again to you that your cattle and goods are ours, and ours are yours. We do command therefore our ambassadors to make report unto you on this wise. Now when Jonathan heard that Demetrius's princes were come to fight against him with a greater host.
All right, we're going to stop there. All right, so we see now that they strengthened the relationship with Rome. They strengthened the relationship with the Lacedaemonians, all right, who were the Vikings, all right, and they're strengthening these relationships, all right, and they're coming back into their land. And this is what's happening all because of the righteousness of the sons of Mattathias, who are known as the Maccabees, key one, Judas the Maccabees, all right? And now he's being replaced by Jonathan, and Jonathan is doing all these things, and he's sending out all these peace treaties, and he's making all these peace treaties. And once again, the surprising thing with Rome, that they are very peaceable. They were peaceable to our people, and because they were peaceable to our people, all the enemies around them had to become peaceable to Israel because they're afraid of the new power that's coming up. And they're trying to make their deal better, all right? Because once again, if Israel's dealing with their God, they have the Maccabees there. You don't want to be in their wrong place, on their wrong side, because now your kingdom will be given up to the other gods. To the other kingdom, and they don't want that to happen. So this is why you see all this treaties and this and that happening. It's all because how Rome came and approached things. They came and approached things with Israel very friendly and made a deal and a pact with them. All right, so Rome and Israel weren't beefing. We're going to kind of see, even it's going to make us look at the relationship in the New Testament with Rome and Israel a little differently. If you're really looking, they're not really enemies. It's just how the world is set up and their power that makes them around each other, but they're not enemies per se. All right, and you're really going to see that it's the Jews that's really going against what's happening with Christ and all of that. All right, it's not Rome. This is why they don't really want to do it, because they have a peace treaty with Rome. All right, so we're going to see how does Rome go into attack Israel, all this, when we have peace treaties, we have peace between the two people. They don't have no fighting, no nothing right now. All right, once again, thank you everybody for bearing with us for this, because this part of the history is, once again, we're cramming about 500 something years into one, all right, into a quick lesson real quick on all these things that's happening, and keeping a close eye on what happened with the image of God and all of that. So we're going to see that we're seeing that the Maccabees during these times, they're the ones that held everything down. All the sons are making sure that they're serving the Most High, and because they're there, all these things are able to happen and set up the time for Christ to return and Israel back in their land and all of this. They're not there because of wickedness. They're not there because, oh, let's bring you back. Some righteous people had to come and had to change things and do things to make this happen. And this is the whole point of the Maccabees and the book of Maccabees that allows us to connect everything. Also, us seeing Rome come up for the first time, our interaction with Rome, all right? Us and our people being friendly with Rome, having peace treaties, all right? Once again, that relationship between Israel and Rome caused all the enemies about to now seek peace treaty with Israel, so that they're not going to go and join those people in war, all right? So once again, all praises be unto the Most High Almighty, Ahai Yeshua Christ. We're going to go to Philippians 4 and 8.
The book of Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you.
All right. right. So once again, we went through this whole lesson. The beginning of it, we went into the time of Cyrus as we left off at that time with Nebuchadnezzar taking us down. All right, and we've seen how that changed. All right, Cyrus coming up in the land. All right, and King Cyrus dealing with Daniel. Daniel showing him who the true God was. Him realizing that he's dealing with false gods, gods that do not really eat. His people have been lying to him. All right, because he doesn't have full understanding. All right, and he gets that understanding, and he knows whose power comes from, and he gives proclamation for the temple to go back up. All right, and then we get to Antiochus and all what happened. And once again, this is the time where we're emphasizing on the Maccabees, all what the Maccabees did. Mattathias stepping up, Judas Maccabees, Jonathan, all of them stepping up and fighting and defending the law, defending the faith in a time where all Israel's gone astray. If there's no Maccabees, there's no time of Christ. There's no putting the kingdom back together. All right, there's no temple is okay. There's no temple for Christ to come to. There's no anything of that. If the Maccabees don't stay firm and defend the faith, as many, especially when they were attacked on the Sabbath, they would have died. And they said, we're not going to die. We're going to be defenders of the faith. All right. And I guess you could say that that's where that first thing started from, defenders of the faith. Because other people, they're not really defending the faith. We see that they're going to follow the Sabbath. They're saying we're making a pact that no matter what feast day, no matter what, we're going to defend the faith. Israel didn't have that mindset to defend the faith like that. They had it as we're going to keep the faith and we're going to die in the faith. They didn't have we're going to defend the faith. All right, so the Maccabees is the ones, the defenders of the faith. Through war, through all of that, they defended it so that they do not perish. All right, this is why we're going through it, because once again, next week is going to tie us right down onto exactly right before Christ comes, what's happening, how the temple gets, what's going on with the temple, and then we're in the time of Christ, and we could kind of close out this whole image of God thing. But once again, all praises be unto the Most High Almighty, Ahaya Shahaya Christ, our Lord and Savior. This is the SC Community Church of Christ. My name is Archbishop Shamar.
And I'm Bishop Micah Allah.
And this was your Sabbath report / lesson, the consuming fire. All right, the image of God versus the image that provokes, the glorification of the Son. This was part 6. Most High willing, part 7 will be our last. All right. Till then, peace and blessings. Have a happy Sabbath. Happy Sabbath. Peace and blessings. Tomorrow is the Lord's Day. We do acknowledge both days, as we know both days are similitudes of days to come. The 7th day, the Sabbath day, the 1,000-year rest of Christ to come. And then the Sunday, symbolized by the 8th day, is the new heaven, the new earth, the years, the times of everlasting life, eternity. All right. Peace and blessings. Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom. Shalom.